I'm a professional editor and storyteller, and I use my years of education and experience to analyze the edit of the first 2 episodes of Survivor 48 in order to predict who I believe will win this season. And now, with a 3rd episode released, I am going to attempt to make the bold prediction of not only who will win, but who will be in the final 3 of this season. So let's hop right into the ratings to see what we can find. Of course, the first thing we're going to do, as usual, is attempt to create an Edgic ranking for each character, give them a rating for what I believe their edit was like in episode 3 of Survivor 48, and then use that info to attempt to create a contender ranking for who I think could win this season. So, overall, my initial thoughts on the episode is that this definitely felt like a bigger episode for Vula than the previous episodes. Obviously, we had a crazy council, really crazy council in this episode that was very long, and it took up a lot of the episode. And so, going into this, I think that the Edgic rankings are going to be based a lot more on the council than they usually are. I usually don't put a whole lot of weight into the content of council because it kind of feels like a necessary thing that, yes, there are choices to be made in editing council, but usually I feel like it doesn't change a ranking a whole lot based on what I would have given somebody if council just didn't exist. However, because this one was so substantial and there was so much to it, I definitely think it holds more weight in the overall episode, not just for Vula, but also for the other tribes, because they get less content in this episode than they have in the past. This was definitely the more balanced episode, I suppose, of the 3. But there definitely is still some very interesting things kind of going on here to dive into in terms of the dynamics of the 3 tribes and what I see moving forward. So, as usual, we're going to start off with the eliminated contestant in this episode and go through their edit as sort of say la vie to their edit. No longer the contender rankings, but see kind of how I viewed their edit to be. And of course, in this episode, we lost our pizza man, Justin. This was crazy. I mean, Justin went out in just the most absurd way possible. This is so bizarre, and I feel really bad for Justin. However, I do think that his edit makes a lot of sense, knowing kind of how he went out, especially because I think in the past, we have seen when someone goes out in a really bizarre, crazy way like this, usually they get under-edited a little bit so that you don't feel too bad that they got eliminated in this really bizarre way. Whether it's they have to get, maybe pulled from the game, or they are eliminated in just a really crazy, bizarre council. Someone like maybe even like a J Maya would be a good comparison. Of course, spoilers for all of Survivor 48 and pretty much most of the new era moving forward. Be prepared. I would say J Maya is maybe a good comparison. Now, we didn't see a whole lot of J Maya, just a little bit, but because she went in such a bizarre way, it made sense that she was maybe a little bit under-edited compared to other characters. And I think that Justin kind of has this edit where they don't want you to care too much over the top for someone that goes out in this really bizarre way. So we definitely lost someone that was not very high on my contender rankings in this episode. So makes a lot of sense. For Justin, I feel like, he obviously got voted out. He went on the journey, but I don't think we got a whole lot from him. I'm thinking I might take this middle of the road 3 ranking and put it there for Justin. I still don't think there was really any tone here for Justin. Pretty neutral. His biggest edit so far, I'd give it a 3. But I don't know if there's so much that I would give it a complex ranking. And this is something that we're going to see throughout the rankings, that because so much of the episode was dedicated to the council and other stuff, I feel like we're going to see smaller numbers in the visibility range and also less complex ratings than we might see in a typical episode. And so I think Justin, we saw a little bit of him, but honestly, I feel like we saw more of him kind of talk about his life in the pizza place in this little bit we got from him before than in this episode, where he talked about like being allied with Cedric and going on the journey and losing his vote and wanting to trust things, but really I feel like not a whole lot there for Justin. So I'm giving him a middle of the road. So with Justin, R.I.P. He was fun on the show, but not a major loss in terms of our Edgic here. So we can hop up to Bianca, and then we'll go down in alphabetical order the rest of the rankings. So, Bianca, I mean, I'm a little bit unsure what to do with Bianca in this episode because I feel like we saw a lot of her, but I wouldn't really say it was complex personality because it was kind of a lot of her just kind of talking about either stuff we already knew or just like literally the events of what was happening. I mean, it was a good episode for Bianca. Don't get me wrong, especially compared to the previous two episodes, which were not good for Bianca. But I don't know if I would really. I don't think I bump her up to complex. I feel like I still give her a middle of the road. Honestly, I kind of think maybe the same rating as Justin. At best, I would think maybe a middle of the road 4, just because she did get so many confessionals on a factual standpoint. But I'm thinking somewhere between a middle of the road 3 and a middle of the road 4 for Bianca here. Also, I have been updating some of the previous rankings a little bit, not a ton, but if you ever see, previous rankings change, keep an eye out because sometimes they're going to go up and down. I'm thinking a middle of the road 3 here for Bianca. At best, I'd give her a middle of the road 4, but I don't think I'm going to go any further than that. I feel like this is good for her, but I still don't see like longevity or a whole lot in her edit. She still could wake up and have a great run. I never would rule anyone out from, having a good run in the season, but I would rule people out from winner contention. And I still think that this isn't like setting Bianca up for a winner story to me. And even the stuff that we got from Bianca, I felt was better for Thomas's story than it was for Bianca's story in the season. So that's my thoughts on Bianca. Cedric. Oh, Cedric. What an episode for Cedric. I really just this was not a good episode for Cedric. I think he made some absurd decisions. And I think I'm gonna let's pop this up here just so we can be familiar with all the ratings. It's over there. I'm going to give Cedric a middle of the road negative. Maybe complex negative, but honestly I feel like he's more complex in episode 2 than in episode 3. I feel like honestly we got even less of Cedric than we did of Justin. I don't know if that's factually true, but and I'd give him probably a 3. Crazy that he went from a positive to a negative here, but I feel like I still am not seeing like good narrative for Cedric, and this was a bad episode. We saw call Cedric honestly the worst, I think. We saw Justin say that Cedric like something like strategy doesn't come so easily to him or something like that. So I feel like we got both like kind of a little bit of talk of Cedric not being as trustworthy as people thought he would be, and also like a little bit of like dodo, like he's not that smart, which there's more than one way to get a negative edit. It's not just being a villain, it's also being maybe just like not good or not reliable. And I feel like I would lean. I was thinking of, is it just mixed or is it neutral? But I think I gotta go negative tone for Cedric here, honestly. Yeah, that's my feelings on Cedric in this episode. We'll go more into my thoughts on people's future when we go into our contender rankings. But for now, we're just going to kind of stick with the facts of the episode. So, Charity. Small episode for Charity. Not a lot from her. I'm feeling I'm going to borrow this under the radar too for Charity. On this episode, I'm trying to think, did we get like tone for Charity here? Not really. Charity really felt like a non-factor in this episode to me. I think she had probably one confessional talking about how she wants to work with Mitch. We saw how she is still feeling really good with Mitch and how she really likes him, but other than that, not a whole lot. So yeah, I think I'd give under the radar too here. Better than the next person though, which is Chrissy, who I think I'm gonna assign the first under the radar one of the season, because Chrissy got a big fat goose egg in the edit of this season, of this episode. If we take a look, I have Rob's fact checker rankings here. We have Chrissy with a big 0, which is not a good sign for her longevity. So, yeah, I mean, I think I gotta give Under the Radar 1. And we even saw Chrissy joking on Twitter about how small of an edit she's getting. I don't think it's terrible. We saw a few lines from her on the beach, but no confessionals is really bad. So we're going with Under the Radar here. 1. David, big episode for David. He got this is an interesting episode because he got such a big scene. One of like the first scenes of the episode was this massive scene dedicated solely to David, and then we didn't really hear from him at all the whole rest of the episode. I mean, we saw him in the challenge a little bit, but that was kind of it. But man, what a very interesting scene for David. It felt, dare I say, over the top. I think I heard people's voices on Eva's ranking in the first episode, why it should be complex positive and not over the top positive, and I had to agree, and so I did change that. And I feel similarly about David's edit in this episode, and that I do think it was like egregious, but it was still complex. It wasn't a caricature. It was like learning about him and like in very interesting specific ways that it was very emotional. I would give David probably a complex positive 3, because I felt like that scene was so intense. Even though we didn't really see much of him the rest of the episode, I still think that one scene was so much David that it was enough to give him a 3 on the ranking, I think. And definitely a very positive episode for him. You learn a lot about him, his backstory, his personal life. Yeah, good episode for David. Eva, not as good of an episode. Dare I say, I'm leaning negative. This is difficult. It's really difficult. I don't really know if I would go. I'd either go complex mixed or complex negative. I do think this was, we saw a few scenes of Eva in this episode. We saw her giving the bracelet. That's true. We did see her giving the bracelet to Joe, but people kind of reacted not so good to that. And we saw the scene of her trying to strategize with Star, which kind of backfired on her. I don't know if I would. I don't think it was super negative. And it felt more like people were wary of her alliances rather than like necessarily being negative about her too much. I think I might give her a mixed tone here, a complex mixed, and give her a 3, I guess. Yeah, I think we saw just as much of her as we saw of David. She had some substantial scenes, a couple of them. Yeah, I think that's a good ranking for Eva. Tough. I mean, she's definitely, Eva's got a lot of tone. I'll give you that. Eva's got a lot of tone so far, both positive and negative. She has an interesting edit so far. Going into Joe, this was definitely Joe's smallest episode. I still think complex here for Joe, though. Because I feel like even though he only had kind of one scene, and it wasn't a whole lot, we still saw him talk about his backstory, him being a firefighter, and how he uses his firefighter skills to kind of boost tribe morale. We got the really funny scene as well of him talking about the wine with Thomas and them. So I feel like this was still a good episode for Joe. I think I would give him complex positive 2. Because there wasn't a ton of Joe in the episode, but what we got I still found to be complex. And I still think, positive tone for him. Kind of, being a morale booster for the tribe. So that's how I'm feeling. Moving on to Camilla. Camilla in this episode, I feel like we saw her on the journey. We saw her call David a Giga Chad. Which was really funny. Last season, we saw RHAP mentioned on Survivor. This season, we get Chad mentioned on Survivor. So very funny to see the internet slang arriving on the show. I still feel middle of the road, though, here for her. This definitely felt like her least complex. I feel like we saw her, but not a ton. I maybe would give her the same ranking as Bianca, honestly, because she went on the journey. Honestly, like all the 3 journey people, I felt like were all like middle of the road 3s because we saw them on the journey, but like not really a whole lot of complexity to any of them. Yeah, I mean, we saw Bianca, Bianca had the scene telling Thomas about the advantage, which I feel like kind of transitioned into Thomas and away from Bianca. Camilla had telling her team about the advantage, how she didn't really want to. I don't know. I think just a neutral tone here. Yeah. I think a middle of the road 3 for Camilla. Kyle. Kyle had an interesting episode. I mean, we saw a little bit of Kyle. We saw Kyle talking with David and how he overreacted to David talking about his living situation. We saw Kyle. We saw Mitch on the boat with Kyle and how Kyle was kind of in the middle of the tribe in a way. So I think strategically, this was a good episode for Kyle. Edit-wise, I still don't know if there was a ton of complexity to it, really. It was kind of just his position in the tribe. Honestly, I did not get a lot of complexity from Siva at all this episode, other than David. David had that really complex scene, and everyone else kind of felt like we just kind of saw the dynamics that we typically were expecting. I think Kyle had the second best episode, maybe. I think we saw more of Camilla just because of the journey. But I think Kyle had a good strategic placement, but I still feel like it's middle of the road. I'd say middle of the road 3, maybe like a middle of the road mixed 3, because I'm a little bit like, his reaction was positive, but was not like taken well, I guess. Yeah, that's tough. I don't know if would I demote him to a 2? I kind of want to demote him to a 2. Is this too small of an edit for Kyle? Is that crazy? That's kind of my guts tell me a middle of the road too, because I feel like he did have scenes and we saw some confessionals of him, but it didn't feel like all that substantial. I mean, compared to Bianca, we saw way more of Bianca, and we saw more of Camilla, who have threes. So yeah, I'm screw it. I'm giving Kyle 2, and it's partially because there just wasn't much to show in the episode. I don't think it's like a bad sign for Kyle, but um, that's just how I'm feeling right now, and maybe that could change. Mary, boom, woo, big episode for Mary. Obviously it was going to be, because obviously this was a really good episode for her because she had a lot going on, and she, of course, won the day, played the shot in the dark. Great stuff for Mary. Yeah, I mean, this was really good. I don't know if there was tone to Mary's edit, really. I mean, there was maybe like a tad of tone, but not a whole lot. I would maybe give Mary just a complex 4. Especially like with all the tribal shenanigans. We haven't got to Say yet, but I feel like this was an episode all about Mary and Say, really. And I'll talk more about that when I get to Say. Mitch. Interesting episode for Mitch. Again, smallest Mitch episode. We saw him improve his strategic standing by kind of making this alliance with Charity, and then kind of maybe having an alliance with Kyle a little bit. But I still feel like he didn't get a ton of screen time. I would probably give him the same as Kyle, a middle of the road too. I still feel like this wasn't a super Mitch-centric episode. Yeah, I know. These are interesting ratings so far. We'll see how we end it. But I feel like we didn't really learn anything about Mitch other than that he was trying to make this alliance with Kyle. Yeah. Okay, so Say. So this is what I mean when I say Mary and Say had very big episode. And it was all about kind of their relationship and their dynamic. And I'm conflicted on tone here. I don't know if... I feel like this was Say's least tonal episode. I think we still saw a lot of her, but I don't think we heard as much like about her, and not as much of sort of like if she was liked or trusted or not. She was just kind of there. And we saw Cedric vote for Say, obviously twice in the revote at council. We didn't really hear why, or really any like negativity as to why he was against trying to vote for Say. My instinct going into this was to just give Say and Mary the same rating, just a complex 4 on both of them, because I feel like both of them, I feel like Say was maybe a more, obviously is like a more negatively painted character than Mary is. But at the same time, I felt like this episode was about how they both like respected each other and how they both had a lot of fun playing with each other, even if they disagree. So I wouldn't give either of them one way or the other. At best, I would give one or both of them mixed, but I kind of like the idea of just giving them both a complex 4. So that's where we're sticking with right now. Shaheen. I'm thinking a middle of the road 2 on Shaheen. We've not a whole lot here. We saw Shaheen being the narrator of his tribe. He still is the narrator of the tribe, and he talked about basically just where the dynamics were of the tribe that we already knew. He had a confession just talking about, oh yeah, here's we have these people are aligned, stars on the outs, and we're probably going to vote out star if we go to tribal. We already knew all that. Not a whole lot of new info here, and we didn't really learn anything about Shaheen. I would say that, yeah, this was definitely the smallest episode for Shaheen. Maybe a bit of a cool down. We saw he had a good episode last time. A little bit of a cool down here, middle of the road too. Star. I'm feeling the same, I think. I'm feeling a middle of the road too here on Star. Because Star had a scene, had the scene with Eva. Star had the scene talking with Star had the scene talking with Eva. Star had the scene reporting back to Thomas and Bianca. Actually, you know what? I think I'm going to give Star a middle of the road -2. Because I don't think this was like a terrible episode for Star, but especially since you haven't given Star a negative yet. It's been mixed both times. I feel like this was the episode where we saw Thomas say that Star's like a wild card, and even though he's thinking about working with her, he doesn't really trust her or want to work with her too much, which is like not a good sign for Star. Like in terms of like positive Edgic. And we also, just saw them talking about how they want to vote her out. I mean, not super negative by any means, but if I'm trying to give like ratings to specific people here, that's how I feel. Yeah, I think so. And then we get to Thomas, and I think I might give Thomas the same ranking I gave him last time, which is a complex personality -3. Because I still feel like we saw a good amount of Thomas in the episode. We saw him keeping his advantage to himself and his relationship with Bianca, and how he maybe wants to flip on the other people to work with Star. I would say like less villainous than the previous episode, but he gave that big villainous cackle. He gave the villain laugh in the episode, and I feel like if I'm not going to give a good villain laugh a negative rating, then what am I even doing here? Because I don't think he was mixed. I mean, I don't think he had like positive tone. So at best, it's either negative or neutral. And I feel like it's more fun than to give him a negative. So that's how I'm feeling right now. And obviously, these are all subject to change. I'm doing this much sooner after the episode than I have in previous weeks. So there's not as much like data out there of like other people analyzing the episode and whatnot. So that's how I'm feeling. That's the ratings. Obviously, like I said, I expected a lot more middle of the roads and under the radars here than in the past. But yeah. I'm feeling good about those charts, and if I decide to come back and revisit them another time, then I can. But that's where they are standing right now. So, with that being said, let's move on to get into our contender rankings. And this is where we're going to discuss a little bit more about how I view people's future. So we have our kind of list of people here on the right side, and we're just going to kind of drag them over into where we view them. So obviously Justin was in the bottom 2 in the first 2 episodes. Did not think he was a high contender, so this makes a lot of sense that he would go out in this spot. I would say is Bianca still in my final ranking? Yeah, I think so. I just think that even though we saw Bianca in this episode, at best, Bianca turns out to be Genevieve, right? And the next best option I could see shooting for Bianca is like an Annika, if I'm comparing it to people from last season. I still think Bianca is not long for the show. I still think I could see her being swap screwed. I think that would make a lot of sense. Obviously, now we have confirmation that next week we will have the swap based on the previously on Survivor or not the previously, on the next time on Survivor. And I still think Bianca has very, very little complex content and not a whole lot of player POV. Other than from Thomas. Really the only person talking about Bianca is Thomas. And I just think that's more about like giving Thomas content than giving Bianca content. So I'm putting Bianca on the last spot. I'm going to move Chrissy down to second last, which maybe Chrissy should maybe even be last below Bianca. Maybe. I know that Bianca technically got a lot of screen time, a lot more confessionals in this episode. And like I said, if we look back at the Rob's Fact Checker charts, that goose egg is, in my mind, in American Survivor in the new era, basically a death sentence in terms of your winner potential. You're not going to win with a goose egg. I really believe this was like the sentence that everyone figured out, oh, Sue's not going to win last season, right? And so that's kind of how I feel about Chrissy here. Honestly, I'd even put it below Bianca. Screw it. Chrissy is going down to last. Bianca's in second last, because at least Bianca's got some screen time, which is not good screen time. I will say, I do believe that Chrissy will outlast Bianca. I do still think that's true. But at least Bianca is getting some player POV from Thomas and some stuff. But I still, like, we still know that she had her backstory package cut out of the previous episode in a deleted scene. It's not looking good for Bianca. And Chrissy just had so little screen time that it's just, there's not much there. Next, I would probably put Star. I feel like this was still not a great episode for Star. And that brings me in to discussion of the secret scenes this week. I believe that secret scenes are definitely very interesting and very, just serve an interesting purpose when it comes to analyzing the Edgic of the season. And so if you haven't watched the secret scenes, I'm going to be discussing them. You can go watch them online if you feel like. We had a big secret scene between Shaheen and Star in this episode. And so I'll talk about Shaheen when we get there. But in terms of Star, it was like not a good scene for Star. So it's in some way maybe good for Star that was cut. But at the same time, I still feel like we did not get a lot of screen time for Star. It's still like not a lot of people trusting her. Even the people that she's getting to work with her are still talking about how they don't trust her and really want to work with her. I still think it's possible we get an interesting underdog arc from Star. I definitely would put Star above Bianca and Chrissy at this point. But I don't think I'd put her a whole lot higher than that. I still think it's really not looking good. But I could be wrong. And I still do think that Star has groundwork, right? I feel like that really Bianca and Chrissy and formerly Justin were the two people that I felt like did not have groundwork to really go far in the game. Whereas I feel like now Star has definitely more groundwork than the other two. After that, I think I'm going to put Cedric. He's getting bumped down. Not a good episode for Cedric. Even with like the negativity in terms of like kind of being a little bit of a dodo and kind of making obviously the wrong decision. He still like did not get a ton of screen time. Like I still feel like, despite being so important in the episode, I still feel like it was not like. I'm so out on Vula. I've been out really since the first episode that I did not think of Vula was winning. The only one I thought could win was Kevin, and Kevin's gone. And so I'm out. I'm pretty much out on. I'm giving like Cedric and Mary and say higher points than those people below, mostly because at least they're getting some screen time because they're going to council, but I still think that it's really looking bad for them. I might put Charity next, actually. I think Charity might move down a spot because it was a smaller episode for Charity. I don't think we heard people talk about distrusting Charity, but I still think that like the best we're getting from Charity is more like about like giving positivity over to Mitch than it is really anything good about Charity. I wouldn't rule Charity out at all. I still think there's groundwork there for Charity to go far. But really the only thing we got was her solidifying that alliance with Mitch, which does make me think that they could be important later on. And there is possibility there because we're still seeing dynamics of that tribe. And obviously we have the tribe swap, so who knows what's going to happen after the tribe swap. But they could have easily just been, the narrative could have just kind of been, oh, here's the 4 and Charity and Mitch are on the outs and it doesn't really matter what they're doing, right? And I felt like that reminds me a little bit of maybe J Maya and Sifu on Reba in Survivor 45. And that it was like, we didn't really see a whole lot of what they were doing or who they believed they were aligned with because it didn't really matter. But with Charity and Mitch, we're still seeing that. We're still seeing a lot of their alliance, their strong alliance together. They're trying to make inroads with Kyle. And so I still think that we might have longevity in store for both of those people. But I still think, that negative player POV from the first episode for Charity, coupled with the kind of under the radar edit in this episode, it's not boding well for her moving forward. I then would put Mary. This was a better episode for Mary. Obviously, she's moved up a couple ranks, but I still feel like there's not a lot of groundwork there, even in comparison to Charity or Star even. And then I feel like there's not a whole lot of narrative, and I feel like this was a great episode for Mary, but mostly because obviously it was going to be a great episode for Mary because she pulled off this fantastic move. And I don't think that super changes a whole lot. She moves up for now, but I still don't know how far she's going to go. She might go far, but I still don't really see a winner edit there for Mary, really. I see more of a winner edit in Charity, but I would say the screen time and the less negative edit moves her up a little bit. And then with these rankings up here, I think Say stays in the same place. Like I said, I don't see Vula winning. And Say is a big character. She's going to be very memorable on the season. And I know that obviously in the first episode, she got a lot of comparisons to Rome. I think Say is a way better at it than Rome. She's just shown to be way more trustworthy in a way. People have way more we've seen people talk about having respect for her and the way she's playing. So I would not rule Say out of winner potential at all, but I still think that her tribe is so bad, in both editly and, literally in terms of challenges, that it's still not foreboding well for her. And I just think that all these other people are clearly way better contenders than she is. Even though I still think that Say could win the season. She still has a very big edit and is a huge character. I think it's mostly the tribe stuff that hurts her edit for me. And also, talking about the other secret scene of the week in terms of Vula, they had this big deleted scene. It was like a 5.5 minute deleted scene of them like trying to babysit Mary from finding the idol and whatnot, which honestly, it was pretty redundant. There wasn't really anything new learned from it, and I don't really think it was necessary to include in the episode at all. But I do think it still just gives me even more reason to believe that, hey, if someone from Vula does win the season, if it is Say or Mary or Cedric, you probably show more of those scenes and less of like Kyle and Mitch falling out of the boat or Eva and Star attempting to strategize together, right? That stuff matters less if one of these people goes to win. You show more of that dynamics of Vula but we're just not seeing it. It's just not there. And yeah, I really think it's not looking good for Vula. And then we get to Kyle and Mitch, who are kind of reversible right now for me. Their story in this episode was kind of intertwined. I can see Mitch going far. Honestly, I think I might keep them the same for now. I feel like Kyle is more of a narrator. He's got a better spot in the tribe. But I also think Mitch has gotten more POV about him and people talking about Mitch that I haven't really seen people talking about Kyle at all, really. So, yeah, you know what? I would put Mitch above Kyle mostly for that POV. And also, Mitch obviously has a lot of positive POV. I'm not like super confident in either of them winning, but I could definitely see either of them going really far or being a losing finalist potentially. And yeah. And then I think I'm going to drop Eva out of the top 5 to 6 because of her mixed tone, because of her more negative leaning tone in the past couple episodes. We still see Eva in the previously on segments and in the next time on segments, which is good. I still think Eva is definitely a very potential contender, but I have been very vocal in the past that I believe the edit is leading more towards Joe being unable to save Eva at some point and Eva getting voted out and Joe going on to avenge her in some way. And that's really how I feel. Like, I feel like that's really how I feel still about the dynamic. And it takes Eva a little bit less out of the running for me. I wouldn't say it's impossible for Eva to win. I wouldn't say it's impossible for Eva to be a finalist. I still feel very strongly about her, but I just think we've gotten better content from the other 5 people left in the ranking. So she's definitely had a good edit so far and been in the edit quite a bit and been talked about a lot. She's a lot of POV. But it's definitely pretty mixed, which bumps it down to 6. But she could definitely go back up. And I'm going to put David next. Obviously, I've moved David up a little bit. I think he had obviously a big episode. We heard a lot from him. And kind of his history and his living situation, all this sort of stuff. But this is where I'm going to start to make my bold prediction on the final 3 of the season. David, to me, is giving pretty strong losing finalist vibes, especially from this episode. That scene, to me, felt like a losing finalist scene. Or maybe like a fallen angel, like a losing fire making or something like that. I don't think it's impossible that we could be setting up to see David be a winner. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly possible, but I do feel like we're seeing, I would make the prediction David is losing finalist. But I put him in the top 5 contenders because I do think David is being set up very well for potentially going far. We've seen a lot of POV from him. We've seen he's had a lot of content, a very big edit so far. So we're going to keep him, he's making the top 5, but, he's on thin ice. And then after that, honestly, I feel like things stay pretty much the same. I'm putting Camilla next. I still think Camilla has a good edit. I think she has positivity in her edit. She's been shown to be very smart and someone to trust, and she's had decent POV and decent amount of content, not too over the top, a smaller edit, but pre-season, I felt very strong about Camilla. She was kind of my second pick for winner pick. Like, if it wasn't going to be Joe, I was thinking about making Camilla, and I still feel like she's got a really good edit, and things are looking really good for her. And yeah, I mean, I do think that in terms of her visibility, even at the beginning of the season, and I think throughout, if you were to compare her to someone in terms of a winner edit, obviously it would be Erica. And I think she made that comparison herself in her interview. And Erica was super invisible. So Camilla's got a better edit than Erica already. And I could see Camilla having a similar trajectory to Erica. If I had to guess, I think maybe Camilla and David losing finalists. And I think one of the California girls winning the season, with potentially Camilla and David being the two losing finalists. I definitely think Camilla and David are definitely the two Sivas with the best edits so far, in my opinion, in terms of Edgic reading. But yeah. And then I think we're going to keep things the same. I think Thomas, villainous, but in a very fun way. Thomas is such a fun character on the show. I love the black eye from Thomas, actually. I think it's so good. I think it adds so much to his character. He's like Scar, you know? He's got this Scar. He's like the villain. He's doing the evil cackle. I think you combine like the black eye with the mustache and the earrings. Thomas has such a unique look, and I think he's going to be a very iconic character from this season. Thomas is definitely a high pick right now in terms of someone I could see potentially coming back for another season. If I'm making like early predictions on that. So, yeah. And then for my top two, I thought about moving Shaheen to number one. I really did. But I'm keeping Shaheen at 2 because of the Shaheen scene, the Shah scene, if you will. We can trademark that, keep that moving forward. Shah scene. He's got we love a good Shah scene in Survivor 48. And I think the Shah scene that was the deleted scene was definitely a big focus on him and gave him some personal content that I felt was very lacking in this episode. But I also think it wasn't super positive because it was mostly just about Shaheen being like irritated by Star. And he was trying to go out and like kind of just soak up the vibes and relax, and Star was being really loud and irritating him. So it's bad for Star because Star was being irritating, and it's bad for Shaheen because Shaheen was being irritated, which isn't like a very positive emotion either. So I can see it being cut. I think if I were the editor of Survivor 48 and Shaheen does win the season, I think like the beginning of that scene where he talks about just like kind of his family sending him vibes on the island, I probably would have just cut out that little like 15 seconds and threw that into the episode somewhere. Just like show him on the beach soaking up the rays and then cut to Joe making the bonfire or something like that. So I would put him above Thomas just because Thomas is more the villain. And I think Shaheen had a better edit in the first 2 episodes. But I think this was not like the best episode for Shaheen. I think he's still the narrator of the tribe and is in the middle ground. But he's on shakiness edit-wise moving forward. But yeah. But that scene being cut, of the Shah scene being cut from the episode, is my big reason why I'm keeping Joe at number 1. Joe is my winner pick, and I still think he has a great edit. I still think we learned a lot about it from this episode, even though he didn't have like the biggest edit of the episode. We still learned about his history. We learned about how he interacts with his tribe mates. We learned about his humor, and I think Shaheen talked about how Joe they have similar senses of humor, and that's why his number 1 ally right now, and being very funny with the Thomas interaction and keeping morale up, and Eva gives him the friendship bracelet. I think Joe still has such a positive edit and a really good edit. And for me, he's still my top contender. And that's how I'm feeling right now. I don't think a whole lot of changes on this episode. But if I had to predict, if I had to predict final 3, I said at the beginning of the episode I was going to make a prediction. I'm going to say Joe is winning the season, and Camilla and David are the losing finalists. Maybe Camilla getting second and David being the 0 vote finalist potentially. That's just the vibes I'm getting right now, but we'll see. We'll see. Yeah, I feel really good about these rankings. We're going to place them down in the spots. And that is our Edgic for the episode and our Contender Rankings, episode 3. So, feeling good about the season, still enjoying it a lot. Obviously, this council was crazy, and I hope we keep up the crazy vibes moving forward. And yeah, basically, in terms of these episodes, I've gotten so much great feedback and comments on these episodes on YouTube and on Reddit and in different places. So please, if you are enjoying the content, please leave a comment. It means a lot. I love to hear people's thoughts, and it does affect how I do my rankings. I want this to be a big community effort to have fun making these videos. So please, if you have any thoughts on how things are going, or if you just enjoyed it at all, or you didn't enjoy it for whatever reason, let me know in the comments. I'd appreciate it a lot. And press that subscribe button to keep up to date with future episodes. Last time I did say that maybe I would start doing them live in the future. I think maybe it's best to stick with the video format for now, I decided, because it just kind of opens up a little more possibilities in terms of editing and range and whatnot. And then maybe in the future, if things go well, maybe we'll eventually start doing them live later down the line, or maybe next season, I think we'll start doing them live. But for now, I love the way things have been going. I've been having an absolute blast with this, and I've been loving the engagement. So please let me know your thoughts on the episode, on Survivor 48 as a whole, and how I've been doing this format. If you have any thoughts on how I could maybe improve these videos, let me know that too. I would appreciate any feedback at all. So it's been great. Loving Survivor 48. And I will see you all next time. Stay frosty.